On May 19th, 2018, I saddled up my Prius and headed out of Ocean City. My destination was due west, a place called Loretto, many miles away. The weather was fearsome, but where I was going promised a great reward, an art show of my fellow PAFA grads, all of whom were skilled in the old ways of representational art. A week earlier, at the 117th PAFA annual student exhibition, I noticed that the traditions of figurative painting were still hanging on, but just barely. There was a lot more of this kind of art. Than this kind. The art world is changing, and as I drove west, I thought of those classic movies, like The Wild Bunch, where the cowboys were faced with the dawning of a new age and the ending of their way of life. Bittersweet to watch Butch and Sundance in that last blaze of glory, but hell if it weren't the coolest thing you ever saw. Okay, so I'm using a stupid analogy to open this movie. I hate guns, and I don't think representational art is like the stagecoach made obsolescent by the car. But realist art no longer holds the dominant position that it did in the 1970s and 80s art world when many of us were studying at PAFA. And that is why this excellent show is so important for art lovers to see. Realism is still a viable option. The staff at the museum are first rate and put on an opening for the ages. I talked to some of them about the show and its curation.
My name is Jim Casey. I'm president of the Southern Alleghenies Museum of Art Board of Trustees, and it was my pleasure tonight to welcome all the artists from the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, to welcome them to this wonderful evening where their works of art could be celebrated. This is one of the finest curated art shows that we have put on in years. And I have to give credit to our curator, Scott Diamond, who got his undergraduate degree at Berkeley, his master's at the University of Chicago, and his PhD at the University of Pennsylvania. Can't get much better than this.
I'm Scott Diamond, curator of the Southern Alleghenies Museum of Art.
Can you tell me a little bit about this museum? You guys are part of a college?
Not really. The museum was founded 42 years ago in 1976 by the president of St. Francis College then. It's a university now. But that man decided from the get-go that we would not be affiliated with the college because he did not want the college to interfere with our programming or our assets or any aspect of our operation as a fine arts museum. And he had a lot of foresight when he made that decision. So although we are on the campus of St. Francis University, and although we get along with St. Francis very well, we are completely independent and have been from day one.
What do you think of the show?
Just got here, but we're expecting good things. We love it.
Okay, thank you very much.
right.
You want to get a little local color?
The show was the product of collaboration between myself and artist Fred Danziger, who had a show here in 2016. I learned that Fred was a teacher at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts and also a graduate. And we came up with the idea of a group show of alumni and faculty from the Academy.
My name is Fred Danziger. My painting is called The First of Autumn, just looking down into a stream with a bunch of leaves littered across a big gray rock and lots of green and blue reflected in the water. Beautiful spot.
It's incredibly beautiful. You're seeing the entire universe in a little snippet of nature.
William Blake, my favorite poet, to see the world in a grain of sand. Yes. One of my inspirations.
Here's the man of the hour.
Who are you?
Michael Struber, Director Emeritus of the museum.
And I'm standing beside one of the finest pieces in the exhibition, Fred Danziger's.
This place wouldn't exist without him.
Tell me about this show. What do you think of the show?
I think it's an absolutely fabulous exhibition. The Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, one of the best institutions in the country. They've never forgotten their roots. The realism in this show is as good as it gets. I'm extremely impressed by the quality. We just opened a new museum in Bedford, and I'm going to use this exhibition as a feeder for some of our one-person shows that we have in Bedford. The Bedford Museum has 8 galleries, and they're not big. 10, 12 pieces will fill a gallery.
I did have previous experience with the Academy through an association with Evangelos Frudakis, a sculptor. He was the one that really told me the importance and significance of the Academy. Fred just reinforced that for me through his own work and through drawing my attention to other Academy artists. And once I went down that road, I thought this is going to be a great thing for us. If we can bring them in, we have a fantastic show on our hands.
My name's Elizabeth Heller. I'm very happy to be in this show. My 2 pieces are painted from life. It takes me a long time. That painting took many, many visits to the back of the Manioc Canal. Everything changes, but the clouds come back over and over in the same shape. So I would find the right day and try to make the composition have that unity again.
And the still life, you don't have to worry about that changing so much, right?
The onions were sprouting, so they were useless to cook with. But the pink candy dish, to me, it's like a girl's ballerina dress. It has a joy to it because it's pink and round. At the same time, the sprouting onions have a sadness because they're dying. And it's that dichotomy that I find so moving when painting.
I'm Larry Francis. Yeah, it's a painting from the south side of the city, looking towards Center City, the wonderful railroad bridge going across Washington Avenue. It's from last summer, painted outside, mostly on site. I painted some people in, I painted them out, wrestled it down to one person, and there it is. It's an industrial part of the city. There is an oil tank in there, several oil tanks. The subject reminds me of Charles Sheeler a little bit, some of those industrial painters.
My name is Elise Phillips. My daughter is an equestrian, and she went to Ireland with her boyfriend's family. So she kept sending me all these photos. And then her boyfriend paid the shepherd $1 to let her hold one of the lambs. So I couldn't resist painting it because it was just so inspiring, and the colors and the atmosphere, and which is what I love to capture, is the atmosphere of a place. Our family started Newman Galleries in 1865, so I always was geared to paintings that tell a story.
You really have that skillfulness of the old generation.
Thank you. Any painters between 1850 and 1950 are my favorites.
My name is William Sentman. The painting itself has a lot to do with my current life. The past 7 years, I've been doing a lot of road construction since I graduated. A lot of night shift, none of which that I'm quite happy about the industry, but I will say the lighting and the ambiance of all the weird lights, I've always found it to be such a lovely thing I want to capture on the canvas. And this was one of my first attempts at doing so.
When do you get to paint?
Sometimes that's difficult. We work a lot of long hours, sometimes six days a week, 12-hour nights. So I haven't gotten as much painting done as I wanted to. Weekends are my best chance. Sometimes it's whenever I catch a couple hours. This is finally my chance to work on bigger works of the construction series that I'm starting.
If they're all as good as this one, I think you're going to do pretty well. They're beautiful.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
My name is Beth Foley. That is Dreaming of Jeans. in the former Soviet Union, 1987. When I was in Moscow with my husband, every person I saw asked, "Do you have any jeans?" They were desperate for jeans. And then when my husband went back, I said, "You better bring some jeans," and he did. So that's why I have the little cartoon bubble. And that's a friend of mine's daughter. The other one is a plate of the Hungarians. I have the suitcases, they've got their stars on. I'm sort of obsessed with Holocaust things, except I prefer to see families before. It's even more sad. But the Hungarians, they were the last to be rounded up. They're just all ready to go, and they think that they're going to be okay.
My name is Garth Herrick. My painting was done for a show at Philadelphia Sketch Club in honor of Arthur DaCosta, who was a teacher at Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts, and he taught traditional painting. It was a Sunday school picnic in 1981. It was a snapshot I took that I adapted for this. It was at a swimming pool. Those are his mother's legs. It was the second version. The painting at the sketch club had to be a certain size, no bigger, and I had a full figure that I was offering, and they said no, so I started a new painting.
My name is John Sefcik, and I painted Kill Devil Hills, which is inspired by reading the David McCullough's great book about the Wright brothers, which I really recommend. It's about process because they had to both learn to fly and build a plane at the same time, and so there was a lot of experimentation with gliders before they achieved powered flight. Their mother was actually a mechanical genius. But the rest of it is about Turner-esque ideas of Prometheus and Icarus denied. The other painting is of Orion, which is one of those great constellations a lot of people know. It's an old neighbor's house, which also had mythic connotations. The son of that household went on to train a Kentucky Derby contestant. Later, an early friend of mine, we were both writing plays when I was younger, moved in there, so it's got a lot of interesting connotations.
My name is Lynn Campbell. I have two small paintings in the show. They're acrylic on wood. They're done from memory. They relate to my love of nature, and I have a fondness for a feral cat, and I would imagine him on his wanderings, so one of them is of that.
It's a beautiful, almost Bruegel-esque landscape.
The painting with the tree is influenced by Bruegel's winter painting. I don't think I did it consciously, but after I was done, I saw the similarities, especially in the palette, the dark tree against the bluish snow and the greenish sky.
I'm Jennifer Baker. This painting, Warehouse Burning, American Street, and piece over there are paintings of neighborhood of Northern Liberties in Philadelphia. 20 years apart.
Has the neighborhood changed, gotten better or worse?
Changed drastically. A lot of new construction and development, and I've been documenting that neighborhood over many years.
Are the fires still continuing?
No. The fires are a thing of the past.
So the oligarchs burned down the old brush to put in the new expensive housing?
That's about right. Yeah.
All righty. Progress.
Or something.
My name is Glen Heron, and my painting is Posing for Artists. It's a 5-foot by 8-foot painting. Wednesday night drawing session I go to. The model took a break, so I hopped up on the stage and took pictures and sketched and got in my information for the painting to show people what it would feel like to have a bunch of artists stare at you and do your portrait or drawing.
What did it feel like for you?
Oh, I've done it before. I mean, over being a student, I posed many times, but a lot of people have not done that. So, and then the audience that looks at the painting, I want to give them that feeling of 6 people just concentrating on them.
Inquiring minds want to know, did you have your clothes on?
My clothes? Oh, yes. I just don't want to scare people away.
My name's Elaine Lyle. This painting I did of a scene in New York City, in Manhattan, near Canal Street, and I was just really drawn to the sign itself that said plastic land. It seemed too perfect, along with the colorful awnings and umbrellas and people all over the place.
You have a very painterly way of representing a very complex scene.
Thank you. I guess what I'm going for is more than just representing the exact scene, but the shapes and the contrast and the color.
My name is Janine Leclair, and my painting is of my fiance making noodles in his mother's house. He did go to culinary school, and he keeps me fed while I paint. He brings food to me in the studio while I'm painting and have a show to complete. Yeah.
My name is Robert Waddington. I paint pictures of Americana, trailer parks, diners. My paintings are composites from various photographic sources compiled together. The trailer is from one photograph, the street scene is from another photograph, and the landscape is here in the Alleghenies State Park.
It looked familiar, having driven several hours to get here.
Every turn of the Pennsylvania Turnpike, there's my painting.
I am Elizabeth Wilson. My two paintings are of England. I used to make many trips there. I began working with gouache in 1996 on my first painting trip there. I also work in the studio. Morning Light Cumbria began as a painting of Nyack, New York, standing very close to the Edward Hopper House, and it wasn't working. I just decided, well, I'm going to turn it into one of my English landscapes. It turns out to be one of my favorite ones.
Well, Bob's your uncle. You must be happy about Prince Harry.
Very happy for him and for Meghan Markle.
My name is Jill Rapinski. My two drawings are portraits of individuals who have something to do with water. There's a self-portrait. It reflects on my experience as a young girl when I first started drawing at the Delaware River. And it's a memory of the ship, the elevated train tracks, the Ben Franklin Bridge, all the things that I remember of the waterfront at that time in the 1950s when I was growing up. The River Remembers is a portrait of a woman that I know who grew up on a river. She's part Native American, and I put all the elements together that reflect the heritage of the Native Americans at that site. There's a canoe shape. The hands represent the beans and the corn, significant in the mythology of the people of that region. It's black chalk, red chalk on a white khadi paper made in India. Active, thick watercolor paper. It represents the movement and the flow of the water as well.
Is there an age range of the artists that you know of in the show?
I believe so. I think we are working from artists who have recently graduated, so they must be in their early to mid-20s. And then Evangelos Fridakis, who is probably the oldest living graduate of the Academy at the moment. He's 97 as of last Sunday. He matriculated in 1942, went away to war, and then finished up at the Academy by 1950.
And Peter Payon, I think, is getting up there. He may be close to 80.
I believe that's right. I have seen his name in catalogs going back a long way, so I know he's a veteran too, and his painting, by the way, is very great. I love it a lot.
I'm friends with quite a few people in this show, and I am particularly happy to see Edgar's monumental drawing, which is so intense and beautiful, right under the sign for the show. How did that happen?
That drawing is unique in my estimation. I don't think I've ever seen a drawing quite like that before. Just the sheer size and ambition of it, I thought, was really amazing. And it was, to my mind, one of the keynote pieces of the show. The realism, the ambition, how unlike traditional realism, and yet it is traditional too. It really does sum up the spirit of the title, Tradition and Innovation, and so I thought that was an appropriate place to put it. And the color set it off quite well too.
My name is Edgar Gerrans. My cousin Anita. This is the first drawing that I've done where I'm using an aerial perspective. Anita's had a very difficult life, and I wanted to capture a feeling of claustrophobia and powerlessness. And the other drawing is her daughter, Sarah, with a darkened room behind her, which represents her sister. And Sarah is doing exceedingly well with a very difficult childhood. And they're both set in Kansas.
There is a truism among narrative painters that it really is up to the viewer to interpret the meaning of an image. That sounds very good. and perhaps is even true. But when I ask you what your painting is about and have my sound recorder under your chin, don't refuse to say. Especially if my identical twin brother is loitering about.
My name is Barbara Grant, and I'm supposed to tell you what this painting is about?
Yes.
I'm not going to do that.
I know what it's about. She agreed that I was the only one who ever got it right.
Totally nailed it.
The mother is a stockbroker who spends all her time chasing money, living in a bubbly world of glitter, ignoring the daughter. These little cutout dolls are images of the mother. The daughter hates the mother and is training the bear to eat the mother.
Barbara, now do you want to tell me about your painting?
What I was thinking about, this was when the recession hit, and it was a bear market, and people were losing their homes, and little girls were finally learning that they weren't cutout dolls.
Perhaps I am biased in liking this show so much. So many people in it are classmates and dear friends. One of the show's standouts, Scott Noel, didn't attend the Academy, but has been a faculty member there for years and is doing his best to keep the representational tradition alive there. I met John Whitney in my first days at the Academy, and he remains my closest friend. He moved to Harrisburg after graduation and has become obsessed with that city's Wildwood Lake Park. He told me there's enough there for him to paint for the rest of his life. I lived in a group house with two of the artists in the show. Doug Martinson and Pat Connors, both excellent painters and inspiring teachers. One of the great stars of my class at the Academy could not make the opening due to health problems. I am not alone in loving Chris Nissen's incredible landscape painting.
This painting by Chris Nissen, I really appreciate it because to me, as someone who paints from time to time, I know what it's like to see a painting in your head and get it on the canvas. A lot of things happen, but this one feels unmediated, like it comes straight from the imagination right onto the canvas, about as fresh as you can get, direct transmission from the heart and the mind right onto the canvas. So to me, that's pretty spectacular.
So there you have it, a show that honors the PAFA traditions of realism and painterly craftsmanship. Has the public lost its taste for this kind of art? Maybe.
The judges left town, Harvey's quit, and I'm having trouble getting deputy. People gotta talk themselves into law and order before they do anything about it. Maybe because down deep they don't care. They just don't care. I think you better go while there's still time. It's better for you and it's better for us.
Or maybe they just need some heroes to stand up to the bullying ways of the art world. And thanks to Scott Diamond, Fred Danziger and these terrific Academy artists, it may just be worth a shot. Any viewer will immediately recognize the work is almost all representational.
That was my decision. I have a personal inclination toward realist and representational art, and my feeling that realist art in general does not get the same amount of attention that other kinds of contemporary art get in the art world right now.
Thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you. I appreciate your time and coming to the show.
And for the record, I love all kinds of art, and I only shoot things with cameras.